Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give it a minute or two for some additional people to join. So if you could just kind of hold on for a little bit with us on this line, that'd be great. Thank you. Hey, Josh, Arturo, Yvonne, are you guys comfortable with us starting now, or should we still give it some time?
I think we can
I'm
get started.
ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Rebecca Terrazas Baxter. I am a co-chair of the SSMP Community Engagement Committee. Thank you for joining us in our meeting today. I'll pass it on to Sahara to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. This is Hara Wasanu. I'm the Director of Programs for Alianza, and I'm also a co-chair for the SSMP Engagement Committee.
Great. So thank you once again, all of you for joining us. Just want to give a brief welcome and kind of go over today's meeting purpose and review of the agenda before we do some additional introductions that we have new team members. I know you guys have seen the updates that have gone out. If you are on the mailing list also for the SSMP updates, I'm sure you've seen all the different additions. And so we'll do some introductions shortly. But before that, just kind of want to go over a little bit of the purpose of the meeting today and overview of the agenda. You know, one of our main purposes, as you'll see as you're reviewing today's agenda, we do have a lot of time that's going to be really focused on finalizing the CEC Charter 1.0. I know we've had several meetings discussing the charter, this advisory committee, its purpose, its mission and its goals as well. And so just wanted to briefly go over and take this time and opportunity to what we would say finalize it, although we all, I think, have an understanding and we hope to by the end of this meeting that this will be a working document. And we'll be able to proceed with that. We do have a little bit of time to talk about future CEC meetings, the language access needs that we have, translation, interpretation, plain language, what that means, what are the needs and how we can plan for the future. We'll also take some additional time to talk about the long range plan community meetings that recently took place. I know some of our new staff, our PAO, Miguel will kind of provide us with an overview of that. And then we'll talk about upcoming community engagement opportunities that we have planned as far as CNRA and DWR have planned to come up in the future. So I don't know, I think we'll have a comment period after that, and then we'll review some action items and talk about next steps and close up the meeting and wrap it up and then we'll decide after that and do another doodle poll as to when will be another good time to meet, I'm sure. So if you want to take it on from here, Miss Yvonne, to do some introductions of the new team members and how we can kind of go from there.
Sounds great. So good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with all of you today. And I'm glad to share some good news that the state has been able to fill some of the positions that we have previously discussed during our committee meetings. So we have 3 new members of our team, and we are looking forward to having them introduce themselves to you. They'll share their names, their title, the agency that they work for, and their role within the Salt and Sea Management Program. And the first one we have is, in addition to DWR, which is the Department of Water Resources where I work, and his name is James Newcomb. Go ahead, James.
Thanks, Yvonne. Good morning, everyone. So I recently started in this newly created position. It was created by Department of Water Resources to work in a leadership capacity with other members of the state team to deliver on our Salt and Sea projects. I've been with DWR for 15 years. My background is primarily in building new infrastructure in rivers and flood bypasses to improve conditions for listed fish. I'm hoping to leverage some of the experience and knowledge that I've gained over that time to help in this effort on Salt and Sea. One of my roles will be to be heavily involved in developing the long-range plan. I have a lot to learn about Salt and Sea. I'm new to this area, but I'm excited and motivated to do that and help this team in any way that I can. So thanks for allowing the introduction, Yvonne, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. And real quickly, Justin, can you add Moises Moreno Rivera as a panelist? I can send you his email if you don't have it, but he's also with the Natural Resources Agency.
Yes, please. Send me the email and I'll make sure they're added.
Thank you.
And then
Thank you to
just
put you
a
on the
reminder,
spot.
just let me know when to change the slides.
Yes, you got it. So then next, continuing with our introductions, we have 2 new members with the California Natural Resources Agency. And the first, I'm just meeting today too. His name is Mario Llanos. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yeah, that's great. Mario Llanos, yes, thank you.
Nice to meet you, and please provide an introduction.
Great, thanks you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I just joined, Monday was my first day, just joined the Salt and Sea Management Program team as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for California Natural Resources, working under Mr. Delgado. And I come from, I worked the last 10 years for the City of San Diego for the Parks and Recreation Department in a management role, managing parks like Balboa Park, administering maintenance operations and budget, overseeing ranger program, and overseeing project management and coordination in a historically and culturally significant park like Balboa Park. And so I primarily worked with stakeholders and nonprofits and liaise with different organizations to accomplish projects in Balboa Park and Presidio Park. And so that's my background. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental horticultural science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And again, I'm getting my feet wet. I'm originally from Raleigh, California, so I'm returning back to the Imperial Valley, and I'm hoping to make a positive difference and lend expertise wherever I can. And like I said, I'm just, like James, I'm getting my feet wet here in the Salt and Sea, and I look forward to working with all of you.
We're happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
Welcome. So then next we have Miguel Hernandez, which shouldn't be a new face to most people. I'm trying to see, where did he go on my screen? Miguel, are you still online?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. So hi, everyone. Great to see you all again now as the Public Affairs Officer with CNRA, with the Salt and Sea Management Program team. I just joined the team about the time of these long-range planning meetings on September 1st was actually my first day. So it's really going to be a month that I'm on the team, and happy to be here, and just let you know that I'll be as active as I can, as I will be in the future. So feel free to reach out when needed. You will see me very active, especially on these groups, on these meetings, and it's really, it's really pleasing to see you all again and be part of this team now from the state side. As you might know or might be aware, I used to be with a nonprofit in Broadly with Comité Cívico del Valle. I used to be their communications coordinator and also the lead coordinator for the Salton Sea Community Outreach and Engagement Program. So, like I said, it's great to be here, now joining the SSMP team. And like I said, feel free to reach out when needed. Most of you should have my email. You'll be receiving communications from me directly for this meetings particularly, and definitely look forward to, keep my feet on the ground, working with all of you and, move things forward and achieve good things for the Salton Sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. And did we have an opportunity to meet Moy last time? I can't remember. It was right around the time you started.
I don't think we did, Yvonne.
Okay, well, also we should introduce Moy, please. If you just joined us, we were going through introductions for our new team members. So the agency you work for, your title, and your role as it relates to the Salton Sea Management Program, please.
Good morning, everyone. Moises Moreno Rivera here with the California Natural Resources Agency. I am working on month 3 as the inaugural Assistant Secretary for Equity and Environmental Justice, and very thrilled to be here with all of you. And also, I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have tribal leadership in the meeting. So thank you, Chair Tortes, for being with us here today.
Thank you very much, Moy. So let's advance to the next slide. And then Rebecca and Sahara, do we have anything else we need to cover as part of the welcome and intro?
No, I think you've pretty much wrapped it up. We really want to thank all of you for introducing yourselves, welcome you all to the team. Luckily, Sahara and I have been able to work with some of you a little more behind the scenes in this time since you've just started, and it's been really great getting to know all of you and seeing the hard work that you're putting behind the program. So I guess we'll kind of move on to our next item on the agenda, which is finalize the CEC Charter 1.0. Just want to kind of give brief introduction to this. This is we've really worked really hard on obtaining as much feedback as possible from not only the committee members, but others in regards to the charter and what it is that's going to kind of lead this group on its focus as we continue to work to help the state implement and administer the SSMP 10-year plan and long-term plans that will come in forward. And so I want to thank the team, Yvonne, Moises, and Miguel, and Josh for working really hard on the charter, making sure to do your best to try to incorporate the feedback as much as possible that we have received from everyone. And so I'm going to kind of hand it off to them to go over some of those changes and what the updated charter looks like.
Thank you, Becky. So next slide, please. I recognize most of the names on that I can see, but just in case you don't know me, my name is Yvonnie Wilhoff, and I work for the California Department of Water Resources in the Salton Sea program. I'm happy to be here today to continue our discussion on the update to the Community Engagement Committee Charter with the hopes of finalizing it today or shortly after today's meeting. So you'll notice that we have changed the name slightly. We've added version 1.0, and the reason why we did this, Becky acknowledged it a little bit in the beginning of our opening of our meeting, is that we hope that this is, we want this to be a living document, and we want to provide the opportunity to update the document as needed and a process to do it that's thoughtful and known in advance. So we will get to it later, but I wanted to acknowledge that's why the title is a little bit different. So then the next thing is, as I was trying to prepare for today's meeting, I was really thinking about what would be the best way to frame our discussion so that it could be efficient, so that we have time to talk about membership at the end. Last time we ran out of time. So here's my game plan, and I'm going to share it with you, and hopefully it makes sense to you too. So what I'm going to do is verbally review the comments that we received. so that everyone could have a lay of the land, that one, we heard the comment, and two, how it was incorporated or how it will be addressed. And then we'll pull up the Word document and we'll scroll through it and track changes like we did last time. It seemed like that went over well, that the committee members like to see physically, tangibly, how the document has changed. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time discussing a couple of aspects of the revisions to the charter, including membership. Something that's noteworthy is that when we get to the conversation on membership, we can finalize the charter if we agree to the approach to how we add members to the committee. And then we can have the discussion of evaluating the committee members and adding members to the committee in another meeting. It could be either the full committee or a subgroup of the committee that can participate in that process. But I also wanted to make sure that that's known up front, that is not a hindrance or a barrier to us being able to finalize the charter and keep the conversation going. So with that, are there any comments at this point before I get into reviewing the comments we received?
No hands currently raised.
Okay, great. So I'll move on. So first of all, I want to thank the committee members so much for your time and energy and effort to help us improve the committee's charter. We focused a good portion of our December 2020 meeting on this topic. The state gathered the comments received during the meeting and after the fact, updated the document, influenced by those comments, incorporated as much as we could, reviewed it with the committee at the next meeting in June. We spent the majority of that meeting discussing the charter. And through that discussion, we received more comments and 3 written comments after the fact. So what we heard in the last meeting, I would say we spent a good portion of our time talking about a few items. So coming from the December meeting towards the June update, we increased the amount of language to provide clarity regarding what is the committee, what's the committee members' roles, and generally that was well received. We updated the committee principle on environmental justice, and what we had learned from our discussion is that the definition that the state used wasn't the best fit. It didn't hit the mark. So during our discussion, we received a few links on some other ways that we can describe this committee principle. So we reviewed those links. We conducted our own additional research, and that section has been completely rewritten. When we get to the charter, I'm going to pass it off to Moy and Miguel, and they can discuss the process and the new language. The next item was on the topic of accountability. In general, this comment came from our December meeting that we should include accountability. The state had some proposed language, and the concept overall was well received. However, there was one aspect that didn't seem appropriate. So it was a minimum meeting attendance requirement for committee members. And it was across the board received as not the best way to evaluate commitment to the committee or interest in the committee. We did receive a written comment on another path in which we can pursue accountability, and that was incorporated into the document. I do see that Miguel's hand is up. Miguel, was there something you'd like to add?
No, but I believe you should be sharing your screen at this time, and we're only seeing the PowerPoint slide.
Okay, you can pull it up. Give me 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
Give me 1 second. I want to share my screen. Justin, how can I share my screen?
So on the bottom of your screen should be a share screen option. It's a box with the arrow. There you go.
I see it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to be the charter, and just so you can see it, it is in track changes. So where I left off is I was talking about just overall the feedback that we received. So we talked about the update that the section on the environmental justice principle has been rewritten. On the topic of accountability, it no longer states a minimum meeting attendance requirement. There's another way, there's another framework that's been described based on a committee member's comment. We did receive, during our last meeting, we discussed Bagley-Keene's applicability to this committee, and there's a recommendation that the state consults with our counsel or our attorneys on whether or not Bagley-Keene is applicable. So I just want to make sure you can see my screen right now. Will my notes pop up? Do you see my notes by any chance? If you don't, that's okay.
We just see the Word document that says Community Engagement Committee Charter.
Okay, that's fine. So I just wanted to pull, I'm just going to read this one sentence. So when we consulted with our counsel, they said the definition that we don't meet the definition of a state body because we are not a multi-member body created by statute, and we are not required by law to conduct this committee as an official meeting. So, for example, what could be deemed a multi-benefit or multi-member body would be something like the Water Board or CARB, the California Air Resources Board. But in the spirit of where we thought that conversation was going, we did include language in the charge. I'm going to scroll down here, that the intent of this language is to acknowledge that although this is a voluntary committee, the state does take the feedback and comments that the committee provides us seriously, and we try to incorporate as much of those comments as possible. So I'm going to make it smaller. Can you still see this? Is the text too small on your end?
It looks okay on my end.
Okay, great. Let me move this out of the way. So all of this text in the charge stayed the same. We did receive a comment that we should refer to stakeholders consistently throughout the document, and we incorporated that change. And we did, continuing on the theme of Bagley-Keene and understanding the role of this committee as far as how formal is it and how will the comments be considered and received. We do have text here that we added, and I'll read it to those in case there's anyone on the phone. So the additional text to the charter reads, as the committee is entirely advisory in nature and has no governmental powers in and of itself, the proceedings of the committee are not subject to state or federal open meeting laws. However, all committee meetings will be open to any interested person to observe, and time will be reserved for public comments. So that's part of it. And then as we continue through the document, there's a section on commitment. There's a section on the committee's commitment. And then we've added a new section on the state's commitment so that it's clear that the commitment goes both ways. Let me just double check that I covered all of the comments. There was one other comment that was on the topic of how the agenda. I think it was more towards the agenda of the committees. So it was a comment, and I'm going to paraphrase, that the committee should not function as a means, our meeting shouldn't function as a way to receive updates on the Salton Sea Management Program. Rather, the committee's time should be focused at the task at hand, which is on outreach and engagement and working towards improving the ways and making sure that the engagement is meaningful. So I hope that that's how it is reflected in this document. That's the intent, and that when you receive agendas in the future, that it is also reflected in the agendas for these meetings. At this point, I want to pause just to make sure in case anybody has any comments or questions so far. Any hands raised, Justin?
No hands raised. And just a reminder, it's #2 on your phone to raise your hand.
Thank you. So at this point, I am going to hand it off to Moy and Miguel to talk about the committee principles. So just a reminder, in case you haven't looked at this document in a while, the committee is very much, our principles are aligned with the principles of environmental justice, as well as the goals of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And that is at the heart of how we conduct our business and how we plan for our outreach and engagement. And this section has been rewritten based on the feedback we received, and I'm going to give it, hand it off to Moy and Miguel to discuss the revision. And let me know if you need me to scroll.
Miguel, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Yvonne. So yeah, after hearing everyone's comment on the last meeting, I think this portion was of big interest, as you know, the definition that was in here back then, you know, it was not only not sufficient, but not you know, transparent, and not really what we were looking for as, you know, as the principles or the core principles for this committee. So we took the task to rewrite this, you know, based on existing language that, you know, CNRA and state agencies have, as well as, you know, what is actually needed for this committee, you know, and our role as, you know, a state liaisons, and the role as committee members moving forward with this committee. So, you know, we wanted to make sure and highlight that community, environmental justice communities and frontline communities are front and center in our efforts, particularly the Salton Sea communities, you know, throughout the region. So we want to make sure that, you know, this principles align with our work as a committee, and align to serve those that need to get this information. So yeah, hopefully you've had a chance to read through this, and this is something that Moises and I took the lead on writing for you and present this before you today. And we want to make sure that it is representative of our communities, it is representative of this committee, and it aligns with our vision, a collective vision moving forward. We want to make sure that as a group, we bring the information to the community in a way that it's you know, understandable, that it's on their language that, you know, it's amenable to them, that it's something that they will be interested on learning from. And not only the engagement committee meetings, but, you know, throughout the upcoming months and years, that we reach to those communities that haven't been part of this, you know, this table. And we want to make sure that we hear their perspectives, that we hear their testimonies, that we, you know, make them be part of this process. So, you know, as you move forward on the paragraphs, you know, just being mindful of what a region has gone through in the past, and acknowledging that there is expertise in the community, that is expertise on the experiences lived by the community. So hopefully, and this is the best intention to bring this or portray this on these lines right here. I'm not sure if you want me to go line by line on this particular section, or Moy, if you want to add a little bit more.
Thank you, Miguel. I think the other component of this is we want to give also context as to why we were adding this. As Miguel mentioned, you know, we wanted to acknowledge not only the comments that have been stated, but you know, as we call for these environmental justice principles for someone who is just, you know, reading the charter or is just getting engaged, that it's not just stating a definition or stating the principles, but also there's a context and an understanding of why we're prioritizing this. So if you could scroll down a little, Yvonne, you know, this was based on community input and feedback. We also, as Miguel mentioned, looked at existing language within the CNRA family that has been used in consultation with environmental justice groups and community-based organizations. So we just wanted to present this draft to you with that understanding, and we're open to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
So with that, I'm not sure if the committee members have had a time to read this new text, but if you have and had time to reflect upon it, what do you think? Do you like it? Is this hitting the mark? Do you think this is reflective of our committee's principles? I see that Luis has his hand raised. Can we, Luis, are you able to speak?
Hang on 1 second. I'll allow Luis to speak. Do we want to go to public comment and have the 3-minute timer?
Luis should be part of the committee as
Okay. Would you like me to promote Luis to panelist then?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Justin, if you could also promote Alex Rodriguez, Genevieve Johnson, and sorry, there's one other, Sarah Friedman as panelists, that would be, and Sean Muir. That would be great.
Okay, done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Luis.
Yes, hi. Good morning, and thank you for this. I'm going to call it a great document. As if my memory and experience serves me well, prior to our Secretary Wade Crawford, none of this existed, and nor that the conversation was even possible. And I say that from firsthand experience. And I appreciate it being called a draft. Some things that just in my lifetime of being part of the environmental justice movement, I'm always very concerned as to government's interpretation or limited language when it refers to environmental justice. So I appreciate that it is a draft. I think it does need to get further vetted. And I understand that government has its own set of spaces where, boundaries that it feels comfortable with. But I certainly would like to continue to contribute to that part of that definition. It does make me uncomfortable again from, coming from an environmental justice movement and being, fully committed to it. We often talk about communities being put in positions of power. This falls short of that. And I can point specifically to the rules of the Bagley-Keene, which gives us some parameters of how to operate in a transparent way, but it falls short of giving us power, right? Not just empowering us, but putting us in positions of power. And I think that's a fundamental key difference that a lot of times gets confused when we overutilize the word empowerment, right? A lot of times we don't leave space for the additional conversation that it's, many are empowered already, so I would say that I think that may need to, that will need additional further discussion. And so I'll ask this question just again, as I continue to read and analyze this document, was that I assume it was a legal definition, Yvonne, a legal that determined this is not a Bagley-Keene and it doesn't meet any other requirements. I assume that was deliberated internally at CNRA, that it wasn't Bagley-Keene, correct?
That's correct. We looked to the code and the statute, and the attorneys at DWR and the Natural Resources Agency reviewed it. And thank you so much for your comments. And if I'm looking down, it's because I'm recording them. I don't want to be rude, but I have to look down to right. Okay, I think I saw, perhaps, was it another hand that was raised?
The hand raised with a phone number ending in 0131.
I don't know if that's a committee member. It could be a committee member calling in. I'm not sure. How about we ask if they're a committee member, and if they are not, we'll respectfully request that they hold their comment or question to the end.
Okay, will do.
Can we allow them to speak?
0131, I'm allowing you to speak.
Hello, this is Yvonne with the state. Thank you for joining us at our committee meeting. I may ask, are you one of the members of the Community Engagement Committee?
No, I'm not a member of the committee. I am Tibor Varga, and I'd be happy to wait until the end after the committee members, when I'm going to be allowed to speak.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your understanding. We'll make sure that you're first in line. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding the new text on environmental justice, the environmental justice principles and the principles for our committee?
No hands raised.
Check the question. Okay, with that, is there anything else, Miguel or more, you wanted to add before we move on to the other sections of the charter?
Yeah, I just will point out, if you scroll down, Yvonne, on the text, right, that last section there, you know, right, any committee members or environmental justice groups, or just any community member at large that would like to further discuss, you know, these committee principles, my email is on there. They could feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to answer any questions and engage with you. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Yeah, we welcome the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then moving on, we have made some changes just to provide more clarity. There are minor changes here that you can see in track changes. And then moving down to something that I think will be of interest to our committee members is this section on the committee's commitment. So like I said, there's two sections here. There's one on the committee's commitment and there's one on the state's commitment. Although you may not see the state's commitment on your screen, it is located lower in the document, and I can scroll down to that. I'll hop down to that section so we can think about them both at the same time. So one of the comments we received coming out of the December meeting is that it would be good to include some level of accountability for the committee members, just so that there is some investment in the sense that it's a shared goal to work collectively to improve the outreach related to the Salt and Sea Management Program's plans and projects and related efforts, and that the committee members share that goal and will assist, collectively we will assist each other to promote whatever is the task at hand. So with that in mind, how can we frame this up in a way that is reflective of everyone's circumstance, right? Because some people may share that goal, but they may be capacity strained for whatever reason, or they're unable, maybe the meeting time isn't a good time for that, for this particular member. So it's not necessarily a reflection of interest or the lack of having this shared vision. So with that in mind, we added in some bullet points here that I'll just read, especially since I hear that there's some members or there's some participants that have called in. So this section is called Committee Commitment, and it reads, members of the committee will hold themselves accountable to do the following: strive to attend as many committee meetings or committee-related meetings as possible, strive to attend as many Salt and Sea Management Program public meetings as possible, to participate in the committee's role to evaluate and provide feedback on the quality and effectiveness of the meeting, while also providing recommendations for improvement if applicable. Next bullet, assist the state with the dissemination of meeting materials, information and materials. So helping us spread the word about the meeting. And then there's two more bullets. Next bullet, and this is carryover from the last version, these last two. Be respectful of other committee members' concerns, perspectives, and opinions, even when they conflict with their own. Respond in a timely manner to communications by chair or chairs, and other members, including when requested to provide input or edits into Salt and Sea Management Program messaging by email. So hopefully that's a little more convenient to do it by email. So just on this section on the committee's commitment, are there any thoughts? Do you think that this is a better way to a better commitment. And then also, I should also note that the comment that we received, or the suggestion that we received, was that in lieu of having a minimum meeting attendance requirement, instead we can have a subcommittee or a subgroup of our engagement committee on an annual basis have the opportunity to check in with committee members that haven't been participating to understand why, and if there's still an interest to participate as part of the committee. So it's less of a black and white standard, and it allows some flexibility to adapt to whatever is the situation at hand. And that is described later in the document. I just thought it would be worth mentioning now. It could inform our discussion. So did I see a hand raised? Is there a comment? I see Luis and then Tom. So please, Luis, go ahead.
Yeah, I thank you, Yvonne, for this section or this expectation. I mean this with all the best intentions, but sometimes, in listening to certain language or seeing certain expectations, it makes me think of a couple of things. And I just want to be transparent, again, I consider myself more inclined as a stakeholder of the environmental justice. But, historically, communities have always kind of been, burdened with like the greatest responsibility, sometimes even being blamed for living in the situations that they live in, even though I would say in most cases, if not all, they've been, imposed to live in the type of conditions that they live in. And, the Salton Sea, obvious, is one of those situations. The Bagley Keene, when I first, read the language, as I was reading the language, it's very clear that it puts that burden on the stakeholders, in my case, the environmental justice. And so the first thing I thought at that moment is like, well, what's the commitment of the CNRA, right? If this is what's being expected, we're being expected to follow a Bagley Keene, even though we're not put in a position of decision-making power. The natural next question is, what's CNRA committing to? It might be in there. I don't want to get ahead of myself. You may have already spoken about it and I just missed it, but that's just the way my brain thinks. So I hope it's appropriate that I ask that question.
That is appropriate, Luis. And I think that if I were a committee member, I would have the same thought too. So just so you know, there is a section down here. I have to scroll down on what is the state's commitment. So we're going to review that next. So please, as you always do, we appreciate it when you're candid with us and you share with us what you're thinking, because that helps us understand your perspective, or at least we try to, and we will try to adjust as we can. So we're going to review that next. But yes, you're right. There is a section on the state's commitment. And then I see that, Tom, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to point out and that this is an improvement. Do keep in mind that while quite a few of the committee members are on public payroll and essentially paid to participate, there are quite a number of other committee members who are taking time off their jobs and coming in to participate that way because we're volunteers helping the Salton Sea. So when you schedule meetings, and I do appreciate that the Salton Sea Management Program in their recent workshops a few weeks ago scheduled one of the two after normal working hours. And I think that it's important for this committee and the other committees and the workshops that we participate in to continue to schedule at least some meetings outside of normal working hours so that those people who are doing another job and volunteering their time here can still participate. Thanks.
Thank you. And then we have Mariela. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, that is correct. My comment is not related to the section. I wanted to ask if there is Spanish translation. We have people from the public listening in, and they would need that translation. I think if you all don't have translation this time, I think it's important to have it next time if we are a group that's considering how to engage community, and given that most of our community are Spanish speakers, I think we should start in this space. So having Spanish translation, if possible, starting right now, given that we do have people listening in that would need it right now.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment and suggestion. So the first part, it is not currently translated, but we can translate it. And we have an agenda item that is right after this topic to discuss language access needs. So for the state, it's something that we can provide, but we have to be able to justify that there's a need. So you're telling me there's a need. So that helps me be able to plan for this and to allocate resources in order to translate our documents and also provide for translation. So thank you very much for your comment. And I would like to hear more about what you think when we get to our next agenda item, because that's the whole subject. And yes, Miguel, please go ahead and add to it, to the response.
Sorry, I tried to get my camera on. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight also in regards to the charter itself. It's actually recognized in the charter on the environmental justice section that there will be appropriate not only translation, but also, you know, other services that might be needed or requested. So, you know, translating our agendas, translating the presentations, it is part of this document as is. So just for your awareness, and also as Yvonne mentioned, we'll have an agenda item coming up that talks a little bit more about this, and we'd like to hear from you.
So do we have any more hands raised? I'm looking at our time and I want to make sure we still have time to discuss membership.
There's one hand raised, but I believe that is from the public.
Okay, so then in that case, for whomever has their hand raised, if you could please hold your comment to the end, and then we look forward to hearing your comment or suggestion or your question. So then moving on from the state commitment, so I'm going to jump down, or from committee commitment to state's commitment. So I'm going to jump down to that section, and then I can go back, and if we missed anything, we'll go back and review it. I just think that logically it makes sense to move on to the state's commitment. So we're going to move down here to the section on the state. So we just reviewed the committee's commitment for those on the phone. Now we're going to review the state's commitment. State commitment, specifically state liaisons, which are the members of the state team that participate on these calls and plan for and help as part of the planning for these meetings. The state liaisons will commit to working with committee chair or co-chairs to distribute meeting information to committee members at least a week in advance of the quarterly meeting. Reporting back information to the committee as it pertains to outreach and engagement, such as methods used to perform outreach and facilitate accessible and equitable meetings, meeting attendance, and comment or questions received. Taking a break from reading this draft text, we have an agenda item that is reflective of this commitment. So let us know what you think. And then moving on to the third bullet in the state's commitment, sharing relevant engagement and project schedules at quarterly meetings. Next item, responding to committee member nominations and recommendations in a timely manner. This bullet's subject is relevant to something we're going to discuss in just, I think, probably the next item. And then the last bullet, be respectful of committee member concerns, perspectives, and opinions, even when they conflict with their own. So with the state liaisons, concerns, perspectives, or opinions. So with that, I'm going to take a pause here and open it up to any comments, thoughts, suggestions, questions. Yes, Tom.
Just in reference, sorry, I have a little
Sorry to
bit.
interrupt. Yvonne, we're having some feedback. I'm not sure if it's from your microphone or not.
Okay. Is that clearer now? I think so, hope so. In reference to the comment we got just moments ago, should it not be part of the state commitment to make available translation services for these meetings? And the state has done so with other workshops and meetings, but for committee meetings, particularly this one, translation services into Spanish, I think, are important and essential. And we do have significant members of the public as well as committee members who are listening to these calls, and I think a Spanish translation is important.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, so we'll take that comment and suggestion down. And then also, I think it will be informed by our next agenda item as well. So thank you. Any other thoughts or comments, questions? Lauren, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Yvonne. I agree with the other folks who have been bringing up points about how this is a sort of clearer and improved version of the charter. One question I sort of had, well, it's sort of a comment, is around that about, I think this 2 or 3 years ago, this committee used to be called the Outreach Committee, and we changed it to be Community Engagement Committee to be more focused on not just dissemination of information, but really sort of iterative engagement with community members. Right now, I sort of feel like both the state and the committee members' commitments to this committee, sorry to say committee like 3 times, is more around the outreach side of things, making sure we show up, go to the meetings, send information out to folks. And I'm curious if there's a way to add a bullet point or some language around how the state is committing to engagement and reiterating meetings with folks, how the committee members can be influential and informative in giving feedback in terms of engagement, and what would be most appropriate and helpful for the community members that we serve. And so sort of a general comment around how are we being inclusive of both engagement and outreach as members of the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And then Art?
Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Did I hear correctly that there is a long-range planning committee meeting on September 1st? Did I hear that correctly?
Okay. So first, there was a long-range plan community meeting that was on September 2nd. There was one on August 31st and one on September 2nd. But not the committee meeting. That meeting has not been scheduled yet.
Yes, Arturo Delgado has said the long-range planning committee, of which Tom Septon and I were members, has been idled. When will that be unidled? We have a target date for that.
So that's something that we can discuss under agenda item, I think it's 4. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put that just on a place. We're going to hold that question to question 4, just because I'm a little concerned we're going to run out of time to wrap up the charter. But we will circle back to that, and I'm going to make a note of it. So thank you.
And Yvonne, just as a time check, we have about 5-10 minutes left for this agenda item.
Okay, so then I'm going to move on. So then the next really important part of the changes to this charter that I think is really noteworthy is, and I'm trying to find it, so please bear with me, and hopefully I'm not hurting your eyes as I'm scrolling around here. Here it is. It's this idea of an annual review. So the logic behind it is we have a moment in time every year that the committee or a subgroup of the committee can evaluate 2 things. And it could be the same committee or it could be different committees. It's up to this committee on how they think it's best to structure this. So one is on the topic of membership. And this is circling back to one of the comments we received. So during this annual review meeting and on the topic of members, 3 things will happen. 1, there'll be an evaluation of the existing membership composition. And based on the evaluation of this committee or subgroup of the engagement committee, if there's a gap that's identified, a community, a group, or whatever you think, if there's a gap in our outreach, that gap will be identified, and then the committee will make a nomination to the Natural Resources Agency for consideration. The old process, which is what we're trying to move away from, is that the Assistant Secretary for Salt and Sea Policy would add members to the committee at that person's discretion. And it didn't really seem like the approach that felt right for the state, and also didn't feel right based on the feedback we were receiving. So this approach would allow this to be a joint effort. So the committee can help the state identify if there's a perspective or a voice or a community that's missing. And then they can nominate to the state, and it could be more than one, who they think would be a person that could fill that role, and how that person's participation can help with the goals of this committee. So that's the first thing. The next one is it would allow existing members at this point, it's just a formalized time in the year, that if any of the members want to step down for whatever reason, this is where they can notify either the committee or the subgroup of this committee that for whatever reason they're no longer willing or able to participate. So then that would allow for that vacancy to be known. And at this time, the conversation's already happening on where are our gaps, how can we fill it? It seemed to make sense to have this included. Then the third step is if part of this evaluation and we're looking at, or the subcommittee's looking at membership, and they realize there's some of the members that haven't been participating, and I'm using that term participation loosely in the sense of either coming to committee meetings or they're not part of the collective effort to assist with outreach and engagement or providing feedback. This would be an opportunity for the subcommittee to circle back with those members and figure out why. Is it something on their end? Is it a capacity issue, a meeting time issue, or is it something that the state's doing and there's a disagreement on something on the state's end? So through that conversation, we can identify, what's going on. Does this person still want to be part of the committee? And if there's something that we can do that would help them participate more. So that's the first part of this annual review idea. Do you think, committee members, that you like this approach? Because if you, on a conceptual basis, like it as it's outlaid here, that wraps up the committee framework on how we address committee composition, but then it opens the door for us to either have the whole committee or subgroup of the committee begin the process to look at our committee members right now, determine if there's a gap, whatever type of gap that you think might exist, and initiate the process to update committee membership. But it would be a separate effort than updating the committee charter. So I hope that makes sense. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and open it up to the committee. Do you like this idea? Any questions about it? Is it not clear? Yes, Sean, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for working so diligently on this document. I would like to say that I do like the idea of an annual review, especially the first bullet point, which would kind of allow committee members to do a self-check and make sure that we have adequate representation from different community groups and facets of the community that this program affects. And I also like that we can take the moment to check our alternates and make sure that we have everything updated so that we have representation at each meeting. So thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Chuck, please go ahead. And if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry. I think this is an improvement. As you know, I've been arguing that some of the cities or the cities of the Coachella Valley are concerned about the Salton Sea and would like to make a contribution. And I think that has been a gap in our representation. And so I think this way of defining how we can maybe nominate someone who's particularly active and influential is helpful. My only question is, are you going to define, set a date when that annual review would take place? Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Chuck. So at this point in time, we haven't picked a date. I think that that's something that we would like to work with the committee in determining when would be a good date to select. Just off the top of my head, I was thinking that the committee would like to begin looking at the existing membership, but we haven't set anything up formally.
And Chuck, this is Josh. Just wanted to give you let you know that we have reached out to CVAG to see if there is an interest on their end to participate in the committee, or if there's some other mechanism for us to provide them with regular updates through one of their committees. So waiting for them to get back to us on that. But just want to let you know that we have reached out and started that discussion.
Well, I just wanted to recommend that you talk to the Energy and Environmental Resource Committee at CVAG, because they passed, they incorporated Salton Sea goals in their annual goals for this coming year.
Right. Yes. Thank you. I'm aware. I do know that, and I have reached out to their director of environmental resources at CVAG. So, who's a new position, our new a new person was just hired there for that, named Jody. So I have started that conversation. So, thank you, Chuck.
And then we're going to take another comment, and then we're going to move on to the annual review, the other part of the annual review. And I did see hand go up. I think it was Pat. Pat, do you still have a question, or was it addressed?
I think it was addressed. Josh handled. Josh mentioned the CVAG. That's what I was going to mention too. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. All right. So to be mindful of time, I'm going to move on. But if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us. I can put my email in the chat, and we would love to hear any other feedback that you have. And the next part of this annual review would be the charter review process. So we briefly acknowledged this at the onset of our meeting, and it's the idea that this charter is a living document. So since we're establishing this framework, that there's this checkpoint at least once a year to look at our membership, it seemed like that could also be a good time that either the same committee or this same group, if it's the full committee or subcommittee or a separate one, but as long as it coincides, that there's a review of the charter. So as we're moving along with this charter update, and we realize that there's something that can be improved, this would be the time to elevate it, and we would then look at it and then potentially, an update as needed. And then we would just update the version number so that we don't lose track on, where we are in our updates. So that's that. And are there any other comments in regards to the charter, this annual review process? If the committee overall likes the concept on how we approach membership, I think that puts us at a good place, that we have a few comments that we received today that we could consider as we're finalizing this version of the charter, and then we can move on and focus the committee's effort at determining if the full committee or subgroup of the committee would like to participate as part of the group that evaluates membership, and we can pick a time for that group or for the committee or subgroup of the committee to conduct that review and analysis. So with that, are there any other comments, questions, thoughts? Are there any hands raised, Justin? I want to make sure I don't miss anyone if I just don't see them on my screen.
There is a hand raised, but it's the same number that appears to be a public comment.
Okay, so then let's wrap up this agenda item. I want to thank the committee again so much for your time and effort on this. I know we spent many meetings talking about this, and I hope that you feel that this is an improvement where we've landed. And I look forward to working with you as we move this along. So thank you. And with that, Justin, if you could pull the presentation back up, that would be great. I think we might be on slide 5 or 6. And then I'm going to hand it off to, I think it's Miguel and maybe Moy as well. Next slide, please. There we go, on the topic of language access. So thank you everyone for your time this morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, so this is, based off previous feedback we've received, and also as we heard early on today by Mariela, Tom, and others about language access on our meetings, particularly on these meetings on the engagement committee. We want to make sure that this platform or this group is also accessible to community members. It's also accessible to those that want to get information about upcoming meetings, information about what's going on. So, we have identified the need to have not only the meetings, but also our materials. Also, make sure that the language we use, it's appropriate to be able to communicate our ideas and future plans. So that's on our mind. And again, referring back to the charter that has been recognized on this new section we've worked on, as well as recognizing the need of the members' support to be able to have an efficient, a more robust way of engagement with our community, not only helping us publicize the meetings, but also helping us have that true engagement with our community, be able to connect in a way that makes them be part of throughout the process. So this is a conversation that we have had for a few days now, and based also on the recommendations made for the charter themselves, it was recognized that this might be something that the members are believe that we might need these services be provided on during these meetings. Also, in pushing the needle a little bit forward, I said also part of my suggestions to the team, and I want to present this to you, is that we have, to the extent possible that we could have these meetings be bilingual meetings, if that's something that's amenable to the group. Moy, myself, and others that could feel comfortable sharing this portions of the meetings in Spanish, so we make more of a inclusive and more of a welcoming environment on these meetings. That's something that can be done as well. So this is something that we believe it's going to be beneficial to the group. However, we wanted to bring this to you and hear from your perspective as of what is it that could be effective, making us have more engagement with our community, meaningful engagement, not just getting the word out there, but also keeping people informed about what we're working on, keeping people engaged on how they can be part of it. And like I said, we want to make this a welcoming environment for everyone, especially for community members. Moy, if you want to add.
Thank you, Miguel, for that overview. And yeah, we're happy to hear from community members at large, but this is something that's very integral to this team. And that's language access is of utmost importance. And we wouldn't want communities' participation to be deterred due to a language barrier. So this is why we're bringing it to the forefront, and we wanted to have a conversation with you all on this. So if you have any questions or comments, really, we would want to hear from you. So thank you.
So at this time, if anyone has any additional comments, Pat, you have your hand up.
No additional comments, just want to be supportive of what you're saying. We do need to have the Spanish language translations and all of those tools and resources for our communities to be able to access in order to, give feedback and be a participant and engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And that also, it's worth mentioning that if there's a decision for the group to make this meetings bilingual, that would also require us to do the charter itself once it's finalized on this first version. We want to make sure that our community is able to comprehend what's being presented and also the intentions of this particular committee. So that will be part of our duties to as we move forward, if we all agree on all this. Victor, you have a question or a comment?
Hi, good morning. Just a little comment. I agree that we should have meetings in, the Spanish translation, and probably, as you mentioned, Miguel, force at least one of those meetings. Probably, if we're gonna have quarterly meetings, probably 2 of them at least, have them fully in Spanish, because sometimes the translation is hard to understand, the interpretation, because the delay of the person is on camera and doesn't match when the translation is. And I believe we should have at least a couple of meetings fully in Spanish to help the people to understand better what we're talking about and we're discussing, to get a better idea. Because sometimes it's hard and the people can get lost on the interpretation because of the delays, and or the interpreter miss part of the message because of the time as well, because sometimes another person is talking and the interpreter gets behind. So I've noticed that on previous meetings where they have interpretation, simultaneous interpretation.
Thank you, Victor. Yes, and that's something we are considering and we're very aware of. And thank you for your feedback, Mariela.
I think my comment is pretty obvious given my first comment, but again, just wanted to support this and also ensure that, and also agree with what Victor's saying, that the majority of the meetings should be led in whatever language is the majority of people in the space are speaking. If that's Spanish, then it should be Spanish. And then also whatever materials being shown on the presentations or documents should also be in Spanish, and whatever other language is being spoken in the space, as well as the material that's being shared out. I don't know if there's a Spanish version of the charter, but I think that should also be made accessible for the public to look at. And then I think for folks who are from the public making comment in Spanish, it should be a safe space for them to do so in a way that their comment is successfully translated with whatever they're saying.
Right. Thank you, Mariela. And yes, it is, part of our priorities to have these meetings be as accessible as possible, in a language that it's appropriate for the group and the residents, of course. Josh?
Thanks. I just wanted to add that also as the committee has the annual review and looks at committee composition and membership, that there might be additional community members that would be added to the committee through that process. And so there could be a change in the composition of the committee that would even further benefit from the addition of translation and interpretation. And then lastly, one of the things that I think the state team would like to look at for future meetings as well is to provide greater interpretation translation services for, I'm going to mispronounce this, Perpetua. Thank you. And that group of folks around the sea. So that's something I think we'll be looking at as well. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. And yes, again, it is our intention to have these spaces and these meetings be accessible. And like I've said before, it's a welcoming space for those that are part of this community that want to have a say on all these plans and all these meetings. So we want to make that that space available for everyone. And yes, Mariela, going back to your comment about the charter, once we get a finalized version of this 1.0 version, we will try to get that Spanish version available as well. Also, piggybacking on Josh's comments, if it's a subgroup or the committee as a whole to decide of the composition of this committee, there's also a space to bring community residents into this space, as they are the experts on how effectively they can be reached, and we definitely want to hear from them as well. Is there any other comments at this time?
No hands raised. Oh, Victor.
Yes, it's me again.
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, and thinking about equity and being a little bit more inclusive. Also, it reminds me that the last two meetings we had when I was requested to add the closed caption to the videos. I think also that should be good to have allow the Zoom meetings to do the closed caption, at least the instant closed caption, thinking of on that someone that is deaf impaired or something, that they can at least see the presentations, the meetings, and read the closed caption.
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, and we'll make a note of that and ensure that we have that available in future meetings. Also for these meetings, we might need them as well. Is there any other comments at this time? Okay, I think we can move on to our next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk briefly on our efforts and strategies that we used on our past meetings, the long range plan community meetings that happened late August. I believe it was August 31st and September 2nd. This particular section, we're going to talk about the efforts that we, as a collaborative effort, as a committee, and as a state and other partners, planned ahead to reach out to the community. So, we also want to, present with what we did, and also hear from you. What is it that, sort of lessons learned, what could have been done a little bit better, what you think worked well. So this is an opportunity to, hear from us a little bit of what is it that we did, but also we want to hear from you if there's a room for improvement or some specific recommendations you might have for future upcoming meetings. So next slide, please. And I want to start off by thanking the whole committee and those that were very supportive throughout this effort, throughout this, the planning, and throughout the outreach phase of this meetings. Everything was highly, influenced by your recommendations, highly guided by your recommendation, as previous feedback or previous meetings that the state has, really paid attention to recommendations. And of course, as we led to this past meetings, and of course, moving forward, we want to make sure that your feedback, that your recommendations, and the members of this committee have that, be a bit proactive and telling us how is it that we can best accommodate our outreach efforts, how we can have a good engagement strategy, so we can bring community and bring those into this meeting spaces. So again, we look forward to hearing your feedback, and I'll kick it off to Josh.
Thank you, Miguel. Justin, if you could please go to the next slide. So I wanted to start with just a quick overview of the meeting, as everyone here may not have been able to attend. The goals of the meeting, really 3 key goals: to officially start the development of the long-range plan and begin early engagement. The second goal was to introduce the UC Santa Cruz Independent Review Panel, led by Dr. Ramunder Siri, and describe the panel's role, process, and how to submit water importation concepts or comments. And then the third goal is to initiate the conversation on community amenities, which is being led by Sarah and the Better World Group. And Sarah was also our facilitator for these 2 meetings and did a fantastic job. Our meeting, the way the meetings were conducted, the information, we had 2 meetings, as Miguel mentioned, on August 31st and September 2nd. We held one during the day and one during the night to maximize participation. We streamed the meeting on Facebook Live in Spanish, thanks to Comité Cívico. And we presented the slides in English and Spanish. We had Spanish interpretation, and closed captioning in English was provided. So we will look to see if we can provide that in Spanish as well, or just in Spanish for the next meetings. We conducted interactive polling through Mentimeter in English and Spanish, and that was facilitated by Better World Group as well. And then we had a public comments and questions period held at the end of the meeting, and those were responded to by the state, the UC Santa Cruz chair, and part of the consultant team. And we responded to those questions live and then also via the Q&A chat. If you go to next slide, please. So we had a series of key promotional materials, very similar to what we have developed for previous meetings. That consisted of a meeting flyer, a double-sided meeting flyer in English and Spanish, a social media toolkit that consisted of a few different graphics and copy in English and Spanish of posts. And then we had Facebook event pages set up in English and Spanish for both meetings. And we shared those Facebook event pages with over to various different groups on Facebook, Salton Sea and other related community groups. I think it was about 45 different groups. And we shared those leading up to both meetings. And we actually got some good engagement on those with folks saying they were interested in going to attend. Next slide, please. We conducted a promotional advertising campaign for these meetings, similar to what we've done in the past. This included a television and Spanish radio package with Intervision that included TV spots on NBC Palm Springs, Univision Palm Springs, and Univision in El Centro, and then Spanish radio spots on La Tricolor and La Suavecita. And those spots ran for a week prior to the meeting, in the morning and in the evening during the prime time time segments. And in addition to those, we ran newspaper ads in the Holtville Tribune and Calexico Chronicle. And then lastly, we had social media ads that were run through Comité Cívico, through their Salton Sea community engagement network channels. And then also we did a social media promotion ads through Intervision as well. If you go to the next slide, please. So for the Comité Cívico campaign on social media, we had 17 different posts that included posts, Facebook Live, and video that reached a little over 5,000 people. And we had 436 engagements. So that's likes, comments, shares, etc. Go to the next slide, please. For the Intervision campaign, this is a snapshot of just the Eastern Coachella Valley. campaign. I'll apologize, I did not get all the data just in time for this meeting for the Imperial Valley piece of the campaign, but they were equivalent in terms of budget and messaging. So for this is a shot of one of the posts that were pushed out through NBC, Palm Springs. They included the video that we ran on TV as promotion shown. We had a 46,000, over 46,000 impressions, 295 clicks, and our click-through rate was a little under 1% or a little more than 0.5%. 1% is about the national average. So not terrible, pretty decent stats there. You go to the next slide, please. We also ran the same, we had a Spanish version of the television spot that we ran as well, and used that for posts in Spanish that were promoted. Very similar stats in the impressions, the clicks, and the click-through rate. So that's good to see. And I think this really helped get folks to the meeting. If we go to the next slide, please. So these are some of the overall stats from Intervision for just the Coachella Valley piece of the campaign. So we had a little over 89,000 impressions, 522 clicks, and our click-through rate was a little over 0.5%. So go to the next slide, please. So as part of the outreach and engagement efforts, we utilized the meeting flyer that was double-sided in English and Spanish, and that was distributed both electronically and through physical canvassing. That was sent out to both counties, the cities, public agencies, various different elected officials throughout the region. We also sent it out to chambers of commerce, to schools, universities, mainly College of the Desert and IVC, and then health clinics, NGOs, nonprofits, labor groups, and then the committee, of course. And then we also sent, this is more along the lines of the physical canvassing, but we posted flyers at businesses, stores, restaurants, grocery stores, and markets, gas stations, libraries, community centers, places of worship, such as churches, post office and mailbox centers, some of the mobile homes around the sea, and then select parks. And then also Comité Cívico, through their outreach, attended quite a few community events, in person and virtual, and those included vaccine clinics, food distributions, and health fairs. And the flyers were distributed through my team and through Comité Cívico and through Alianza. And we also had some support from our cities sending it out and other public agencies. Just to give you guys an example, the city of Westmoreland took some of the flyers and included it in their water bill as an insert. So really appreciate all the help that not only this committee, but that our other stakeholders have given us in sharing these materials throughout the community. If you go to the next slide, please. So meeting turnout, number of participants for the first meeting on the 31st of August, we had a little over 205 participants. For the second meeting on September 2nd, we had 116 participants. With two meetings combined, we had 321 participants, which was higher than the last meetings we had last fall. The majority of the users participated via Zoom, around 93%. We had about 20 participants via the teleconference line, and then we had 12 participants via Facebook Live. And I think next time we'll want to look at how we can increase the participation on Facebook Live, and possibly also add Facebook Live in English. But it was good that we had that as something new this year. or for these meetings. And then another thing that's new is the meetings were recorded and are available on the CNRA YouTube channel. And so those are accessible now. And if we go to the next slide. So one of the things that we did to try to make the meeting more interactive and engaging and to help break up the presentations and to really get some good feedback was to utilize polling. And we specifically went with Mentimeter polling because we found that it was more accessible to everyone, specifically folks that are on the phone, on Facebook Live, whereas Zoom, is really restricted just to those on the webinar. So the polling was conducted in English and Spanish, with translated text. And we had 118 participants take the poll, which is a little over a third of all participants for both meetings. And as you can see, here's an example of one of the questions. This was actually the first question that we asked, kind of an icebreaker question to sort of see where our participants were from. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here's another example of a question that we asked specifically regarding community amenities. The presentation, I think, is available on the Salton Sea website. So if you'd like to look at the full presentation from these meetings, you can, and you can view all the polling questions within that. One of the lessons that we learned with Mentimeter and that we kind of learned in real time after the first meeting was that there was, I think, a learning curve for folks as to how to participate, and we maybe we're going a little too quickly. And so we added additional instruction for the second meeting, and we added some additional time for each poll question for the second meeting. And I think that really helped improve the experience for participants at the second meeting. Next slide, please. So public comments and questions, how are they conducted? 3 ways primarily. We had verbal comments and questions with our standard 3-minute timer that we had via Zoom on the teleconference line. We also took questions through the Q&A chat, and then we also took questions through Facebook Live in Spanish. The way that we responded, if we had the facilitator assign different members of the SSMP team and Dr. Suri from the Independent Review panel chair to answer questions. I think some of the things that we learned, lessons learned, would be that we had quite a few participants ask us multi-part or multiple questions that I think became a little difficult to track and to assign to different members of the team to answer. So for the second meeting, what we did was ask attendees to really try to limit themselves to 1 question or comment. And that, I think, really seemed to help make things a little bit more manageable. And then for the second meeting in particular, the Q&A sort of started turning into a little bit of a sidebar chat with a lot of back and forth. And I think we want to really have, more clear guidelines for the next meeting that would help limit that to be, more technical questions or possibly just 1 question related to the presentation. So those are some of the lessons learned from the meeting. And I think if we go to the next slide, please. I think with that, we'd really like to hear back from you, the committee members that attended the meeting, how you felt the meetings went. What do you think we could do to improve on the promotion, on just the meeting facilitation, overall, what do you think we could do to improve the meeting? So with that, I will turn it over to our first hand raised. Or actually, should we go to the phone line? We've had this gentleman waiting for a long time.
Yeah, one second. I'm going to open up the public comment slide, and then I'll allow him to speak.
Maybe we should have done panelists first and then public comments.
If you want to.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm sorry, I might have mistaken. Let's do the committee first, and we'll hold that till public comments at the end. So Pat.
So I attended the first meeting. It was fun, and with the polling, I just felt like I was behind because I really didn't capture the beginning of the instructions, and felt like I had to toggle too many things. But I thought it was fun. In preparation for the next time, if you do this again, I would say do 2 practice questions so that people get a hang of, jumping back and forth from the meeting to the polling. So maybe 1 or 2 practice runs before you actually do the real poll. The other thing is, some people couldn't access it either because they were on their phone or couldn't figure out how to do the process. Maybe let them know they have until 8 or 9 o'clock or something to respond to however they wanted to respond. So that's just my suggestions. Otherwise, that was pretty fun. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yvonne, did you want to jump in?
I just wanted to add one other piece of information regarding the meetings. So during that time, there was a very unfortunate event that there was flooding in the region, and it did impact the ability of some of the community members to participate, understandably so. So I just wanted to have that in your mind too, as we're looking at the outcome of our meetings, especially, we were utilizing Facebook Live in Spanish, thinking that it might make it a more accessible to a subset of the community, that might be an easier way to access our meeting. And I don't know how that could have impacted our participation on that within Facebook Live. But then furthermore, it really emphasized the need to put the information of our meeting presentation and materials online after the fact, so that the members that wanted to participate that couldn't have, due to reasons out of their control, that they were able to access the information. So I just wanted to also just add that little bit of information to our conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. Those are really good points. Lauren?
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I agree with what Pat was saying in that I feel like this meeting sort of struck, or I attended the second meeting of these 2, and I feel like it struck a little bit more of a collaborative, amiable tone, and was easier to sort of access and understand and sort of engage with. And so I commend everyone who worked on the presentations, and to you, Josh, for doing a lot of the on the ground work in terms of doing pretty extensive outreach. My question is somewhat back to what I was bringing up around the charter, is that my understanding is this committee is to help inform outreach and engagement, and how we can be of use in helping to prepare for these meetings, understanding the best format for these meetings, what's the information that we should be presenting, and how can we do it in a way that's both accessible to, but also responsive to community members' feedback. And so my question, maybe this is for Arturo and Sarah, is now with Better World Group in sort of the mix and leading a lot of this work as well, what's the relationship now between this committee, how we think about engagement, and how that's then being prepared for these meetings? Because I may be misremembering from our last quarterly meeting, but I don't believe that sort of level of thinking through what the actual engagement strategy is for these sets of meetings was discussed in this arena. So I'm just sort of curious about how can we best be of use for actually shaping what the engagement is, not just sort of the outreach side of things. Thanks.
I'll let Arturo or Yvonne jump into that, but I just want to say that we are thinking about that, and we are, I think, touching on that on the next agenda item, and really at the next CEC meeting, as to how we can better incorporate the planning efforts of the committee into the actual engagement efforts of the state for these meetings and just generally. So I just want to thank you for that, Lauren, and tell you that we are thinking of that. So I don't know, Miguel, Arturo, Yvonne, do you guys want to weigh in on that?
I apologize for the background noise if you can hear it. So thank you, Lauren, for your comment. And something that we're going to be discussing, it might be the next agenda item, is the plan to have a meeting that's off cycle because we're meeting on a quarterly basis. So it'd be a specialized meeting in the next month or so, solely to focus on upcoming meeting and our strategy around it with the committee. So that's the intent of our next meeting, and especially knowing that we're going to have some NEPA meetings coming up. There was some feedback that we had received in the past on how we can improve outreach ahead of those meetings with the community members, like a primer so you can understand what is NEPA, why you may care about it, and how to participate. Something of that nature had come up in the past, and that's something that the committee can work on together. But we're trending in that direction. And I don't know if Miguel, if you want to add anything, or Arturo, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of our our goals moving forward, to have the committee members have an active participation on how we do our outreach planning, how we do meaningful engagement for upcoming meetings, especially those meetings that we have before the end of the year. So like Yvonne mentioned, and we're going to touch a little bit more on an upcoming item, how this October meeting, special meeting that we're going to have, will be that space that we're going to all use to, let you know what's coming up, for the NEPA meetings, and also hear from you what could be our best approach to present this meetings to the public. If we need to sort of, prepare ahead of time, maybe we want to do sort of like NEPA 101 or something like that, to get community members up to speed on what to expect from those meetings that are actually going to be the NEPA meeting. So that's that's our goals, to have your input, as it has been so far, but more specifically for those upcoming meetings, have your input be heard and actually implemented as we move forward.
All right, so with that, Mariela.
Thank you for this presentation. I wanted to use this space to uplift a letter that we submitted in conjunction with some residents concerning the meetings and the publication of them and outreach for them. So I do want to acknowledge that they saw some of the flyers in some of the local businesses, and they heard some of the radio ads. So that was good, and they gave good feedback on that. And just as a summary of the comment letter that they put together, they brought in other spaces and other local news that can be used for future outreach for these meetings. So I wanted to mention that in this space too. And then I also wanted to uplift what Lauren was talking about, and I'm glad to hear that we're going to have a meeting to continue that conversation, but also wanted to bring up the importance of adding language around that conversation in the charter itself.
Gracias, Mariela. Justin, can you make Luis panelist, please? I believe he has a comment. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Mariela, for that comment. And we did receive your letter, and lots of great recommendations in there that we're definitely looking at. Next speaker, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate the extensive outreach that was done for these meetings, and I think it was effective in bringing up participation. We also, of course, shared on our website, Facebook, and other social media presence, and we hopefully will keep stepping up the participation and in future, as we get less impacted by COVID, hopefully we can get more physical flyers out in the community, so more people see it who are not on social media or necessarily tuned into the radio. I think the Mentimeter was helpful and good, and added some engagement, some feedback, and that was useful. It was a little bit technically glitchy in that sometimes the question would be raised for people to answer, and the Mentimeter had not caught up with presenting the question that was being raised necessarily. So it's a little bit problematic if your internet connection is not really fast, or maybe just more generally. Also, like to just point out that having the Better World Group facilitator, Sarah, run the meeting and handle how questions were handed out to those the people who were there to answer questions was sometimes problematic, in the sense that in at least one case, she took it on herself to answer the question rather than hand it to the person it was addressed to. And that was a bit of a problem. She's not very familiar with the Salton Sea issues, and maybe doesn't fully understand the context of some questions. So having somebody facilitating the Q&A section who's more familiar with the history and the politics and everything going on around the Salton Sea would be helpful. She's, presenting her own piece of it is great, but running everything was a bit problematic. Thanks.
All right, thank you for your comments, Tom. Luis?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Josh, for such a great walkthrough. The work that was done to reach out to community. I think it's fair. Again, this is not in any way any reference to anything political or strategies out there, but we have been working with natural resources on our second administration now. And I appreciate how far they've gone to give contractors like ourselves, so Comité Cívico, a little more rope to be able to go out and develop, or at least recommend marketing materials that are more culturally appropriate, more targeted to the harder reach population that we're so desperately seeking to engage, in consideration to all the magnitude of issues that they prioritize as well. The marketing, as is obvious, is very traditional marketing. And I want to uplift organizations locally, that there are numerous, including Alianza, who have certainly been leading in many conversations as well. The region is very large, and it's a reality that we need to make sure that Natural Resources Agency reaches out to more of the local organizations to engage them, because combined we can have more reach, but more importantly, because whether it's natural resources or whether, the hard work of NGOs and CBOs going out there and getting philanthropy money to do this, preferably coming out of the investments that are already going into the Salton Sea, that CNRA reach out to these organizations and bring them on to the portfolio of and make them a resource to natural resources and support them and fund them. There's no better strategy than reach locally and bring these organizations. And most importantly, is giving the organizations that trust to develop materials that may not be the most comfortable for the state, but is the most appropriate for the community we reach. Right? We can't just rely on TV networks or on creating a message where Sacramento perhaps may have people who have a lot of experience in national media, in sort of more of the corporate media, but not on the community level outreach. So I'm very optimistic that now that Assistant Secretary Arturo Delgado is building his team I'm very optimistic that now with Miguel and with Moises that these conversations will be happening. They are from the community, so they understand the needs. So I'm very optimistic, and I look forward to hopefully in future meetings we have a different, more on the ground informed marketing development campaign. Thanks.
Thank you, Luis, for that comments. Are there any other members of the committee that would like to weigh in at this time?
I just wanted to do a quick time check that we have, I think approximately 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we still have time for public comment. There was 2 items that came up that we haven't discussed yet. One was Art's question earlier, and then the person that was on the telephone that's been waiting to make a comment. So just wanted to flag that.
Okay. So with that, I think, Miguel, I'll turn it over to you and we can close this agenda item. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, if you want to hit the next slide, please. Okay, and at this time, I would like to give a quick opportunity for Victor to give us a quick overview of this virtual tour that CCV had put together to educate our community. So Victor, if you can help us a brief description on this, please.
Hi again. I guess we're running short on time, so I'm gonna be brief on this. Yes, we all know that it has been hard times for outreach, because of the limitations of physical contact and all that. No community events at all. So we decided to create a virtual tour on the Southern Sea to help the people to, for those that don't have the opportunity to come to Imperial County, or for the people that even locally that don't know about the Salton Sea. So we create a virtual tour. We made our own tour to get some footage, video pictures of the different areas of interest of the Salton Sea. And we created on Google Maps so that people can interact with it, and you can click on, as you see on the image, there's several landmarks, and you can click on them and get a little definition of the area. And on most of them, or I think all of them, no, not most of them, have a video we capture with the drone, and we took some pictures and with a little description about the area. As you can see, there's the SCH area. We haven't gone there yet with the drone. We have just a little site from Google Maps. We went to Red Hill Marina to see the progress there. We went to Bombay Beach, to the North Shore as well. We went to the Salton Sea Beach, Desert Shores, and I don't know if you've been on the old US Navy base. That's a very interesting point. So we present this for the first time on the, we have here a JEHI program, that's a youth environmental health program. We work with the high school students. So we present this to them for the first time, and then we add it to our COI website. So that's everyone can access to it, and I think that's a good option for those that cannot come to the Imperial County, or to anyone that want to have a better idea of the Salton Sea and the situation. So there's when you have a chance, there's a a short link on the screen. You can go there, or you can just go to the Salton Sea COE page. That's saltonseacoee.org, and you're gonna find it easily right on the front page. So when you have time, you can visit it and take a virtual tour. And of course, I'm gonna try to enrich it and try to expand it, go to different spots and try to update it, from time to time. Well, that's it pretty much. So
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, and feel free to reach out to the SSMP team if you are in need or footage of a specific area, like the species conservation habitat. I know there is a lot of improvement that's happening down there. So if you feel it's necessary to enhance the current map, feel free to reach out and we can coordinate something to go out there.
sure. Yes, that's gonna be soon, because I'm really interested to get some video of the progress of the SCH project. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so we briefly talked about this upcoming special meeting. We don't have an exact date yet, but just to give you sort of a heads up that this is coming up, this special meeting that we will be discussing, upcoming NEPA meetings. So I wanted to put this on your radar that you will be receiving an invitation pretty soon from the team. And again, let this space be, the time we use to strategize over, how we're gonna approach these upcoming meetings, how we can have, either improve what we currently have, and also hear from, other perspectives, or I know Luis mentioned others forms of outreach, or, meaningful connections with our community. So we definitely want to hear from you all, especially at this particular meeting as we prepare for the upcoming meeting. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that's coming up, and so you can be ready. We'll try to have some sort of outreach plan prior to this meeting, so we can send it to all of you, and then we can briefly discuss and elaborate from it, and make it a more robust outreach plan and strategy then. Next slide.
So if you don't mind, we did have one question from Art, and I want to make sure we don't lose it. So Art, I'm going to paraphrase your question, and if I get it wrong, let me know. So if I recall, your question was regarding when is the state going to plan for the long-range planning committee? So just so you know, we're targeting to have that meeting in mid-November. So stay tuned for a meeting announcement. Yes, Art, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Okay, just a few brief comments before we part. If we need to show, if you want community engagement, we need to show progress on the ground. So perhaps show the species conservation habitat progress. We can show the complete reversal progress at Red Hill Bay. That would solicit community involvement. They would see what's really going on there. But my point is, we're told we're going to beat the COVID pandemic with science. Where's the science that we're using to prevent the slow, graceful death of the Salton Sea Basin? Mr. Delgado suggested perhaps we need a science committee or a person of science on this committee. I would have to recommend the works of Dr. David Mitchell or Dr. Oliver Branch. They have done extensive studies of how we can increase rainfall naturally. We need to look at how are we going to restore. Species conservation habitat is a great idea, $206.5 million, but I have to ask, what are we doing to better the human habitat, specifically in West Shores? We have enough water available to restore all of West Shores, and the state is not pushing in that direction. It's owned by CVWD. It's available at an unaffordable cost. we have 250,000 gallons of wastewater per day in West Shores that is not being utilized. I ask we consider these things to actually accomplish things, actually start harvesting the low-hanging fruit that Raul Garcia has mentioned, and so reportedly the state wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And then there was a person that was on the telephone. Are you still with us?
Let me allow them to speak. Hang on.
Thank you,
Okay.
Justin.
Number ending in 0131. I'm allowing you to speak.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this meeting. I have received an email. The email had a conference code, and I tried to get on a Zoom meeting. I was not able to get on the Zoom meeting. I was able to call, and somebody in the talks have discussed a potential dry run or test run of these meetings to test for technical difficulties, particularly for the public to participate. And I suggest that you may provide a link which works directly just by clicking on for Zoom participants so they'll be able to participate and have visual just as well as audio participation on these meetings. I have received also 2 links for the August 31 and the September 2nd meeting. Those links have worked just by clicking on it. And I participate in a number of other Zoom meetings which work just as well by just clicking on it. So that's one of my comments. Somebody wanted to say something, so I'm waiting until I continue if I may.
Thank you. We've recorded your comments.
This is the shortest I had. This is the bottom down. You said there's very little clearance behind that wall.
Was there another part of your comment? Did you have anything else to share?
Yes. Do I have any time left?
Please go ahead.
Do I have any time left? How much time I have for additional comments?
Oh, we didn't start the timer. James, can you go ahead and not James, sorry, Justin, could you please go ahead and start the timer? But while he's getting that teed up, could you please go ahead and share the rest of your comment?
Yes, I have written, actually my background is I'm a retired water resources engineer from City of San Diego. And I have written an article about the Salton Sea and the potential Salton Sea restoration issues. And I actually did submit that information to UC Santa Cruz to be included in the evaluation. And I think the issues you were touching on, I think they are very pertinent about the history of the Salton Sea, about what is its watershed, natural watershed, in addition to the irrigation runoff, what it receives, of course, from Colorado River and municipalities. That I remember, actually, I did water ski in the early 70s or mid 70s in the Salton Sea, and I was aware of all the flooding issues in the late 70s, early 80s due to floods. With climate change, we should not only anticipate increased droughts, but also increased flooding. And I think we would need to identify what is the area of the Salton Sea where we're talking about, what we're trying to address, and potentially include a 100-year or 500-year or intensity storm event to be able to contain it. And there is a number of things, I think, that the public would probably need information on, so they would be able to intelligently decide what alternative to support. And particularly, my proposal in this was addressing the various water quality basins along the shorelines the canal, what could be, or these basins surrounding the lake. I was proposing a chain of basins on the outer perimeter while allowing the center of the lake to remain a salt receptacle, receding and increasing based on the amount of natural runoff rainfalls in the watershed. And when we are looking at connecting to the Sea of Cortez, the Gulf of California, I think we would need to have some information on the length of canal it would require, and also the depth of those and the number of pumping required. And we need to look at what is both the global warming impact of pumping water and also the international implications and the potential, transporting salt water and having that concern that the salt water may seep into the groundwater basins and may cause other problems along the way. So I think there's a lot of issues on these, and I'd be very happy to participate on a discussion of these. And I now kind of got cold. I just noticed this meeting going on, so I would be interested to participate in future events and working groups related to this. That's all.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to allow Rob Simpson to speak. Okay, Rob, there you go.
Yeah, good morning or afternoon as of now. Yeah, first I'd like to just kind of second the information kind of disclosed by Mr. Gertz regarding Drs. David Mitchell and Oliver Branch. They are two very well recognized PhDs in mesoscale regional climate modeling, and very familiar with things like the sea surface temperatures and other such things. I as well would like to join or at least comment with any sort of science-based group that's associated with the hydrology and or precipitation induced by the hydrology within the Salton Sea Basin. I have been studying it on a postgraduate level for about the last 7 years. In fact, currently there is an ongoing event that depends on the moisture, net water vapor creation from Laguna Salada, Salton Sea, Northern Gulf of California, that impacts how much rain is produced up at Lake Mead. One thing I do want to let everyone know and just make sure everyone is aware of is that the Laguna Salada, south of the Salton Sea, is currently flooding on high tide events. 2010 earthquake lowered 80,000 acres of the Colorado River Delta down close to the mouth. It now actually allows high tide waters to enter into Coyote Canal, and during these high tides flow all the way into Laguna Salada. So the silts and sands that are separating water from flooding Laguna Salada are razor thin from a geologic standpoint. Increasing that is easy. The thing that needs to occur is to create a circulation system using the tidal energy alone that circulates water through Laguna Salada. Otherwise, it in and of itself will turn into a salt sink, go essentially hypersaline. So that's really all the things that I wanted to say. I appreciate the chance to say it and would look forward to entering discussions by such scientific panels. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands raised?
So it appears, I believe informally kind of went into the public comment period there. And so we want to thank you all for providing us with your comments. It doesn't look like there are any additional hands raised at this time. So we'll kind of move on to closing up this meeting. I think there's some really good information that was shared. You saw that we were able to really review and finalize the charter. As we said, it's a working document, so any additional input that you have, please let us know. But I think we were able to really get some good feedback during this discussion. We, it also kind of led and into the next discussion, talking about increasing language accessibility, not only at the public community meetings that take place, but during the committee meetings that also take place, making sure that not only do we have some type of Spanish translation available in other languages that we may need as well, but seeing how we can identify other language needs that we have through written form as well. So thank you all for your feedback. Please continue to provide that feedback. You have all of our email addresses in the emails that you receive, reminding you about the upcoming meetings. As you heard from Miguel, there are some additional upcoming community engagement opportunities that we'll have. There's a meeting planned for next month to discuss those additional upcoming SSMP events and engagement opportunities. And as Yvonne also shared during that discussion, the Long Range Planning Committee is targeting a meeting sometime in mid-November, but we'll make sure to keep people in the loop as far as when that will take place. Prior to closing, is there anything else I might have missed, Sahara or Arturo or anyone else from the team that you'd like to add comments on?
I do want to just say thank you to everyone. And, if you have any follow-up, please feel free to reach out. If there's anything in particular that you want to discuss from this meeting or from the charter, please, as Rega mentioned, we're open to that conversation. So I appreciate your time, especially during the day. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you all again one more time for joining us. We apologize for going a little over time, but as we know, we always have a lot to discuss, and it's important to get as much input as possible from all of you. So thank you all for participating, and we hope you all have an enjoyable rest of the afternoon.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.